Chapter 9. The penalties for being an accessory to the attempt to flee the GDR were greater than the crime of trying to flee itself. Anna Funder, Australian author. A cold rain was falling early the next morning, making it hard to leave my bed. It didn't help that I had barely slept, and whatever sleep I got was filled with nightmares about Fritz. When I finally did drag myself into the front room, I was surprised to see him seated closely beside Mama on the couch. He looked exhausted and had a dark bruise on his cheek where someone must have hit him. From what I'd heard about the Stasi's brutal methods of questioning, he was lucky if that's all they had done. Mama and Fritz were sitting in silence, and at first neither said anything to me when I walked in. I called his name and ran toward him, but he put a finger to his lips to quiet me and shook his head in warning. "Oh, good, you're awake, Goethe." Mother spoke deliberately, and her words were far too cheerful to fit the situation. "We should have a nice breakfast to celebrate Fritz coming home." Celebrate his coming home? The Stasi had arrested him and obviously questioned him by force. Maybe we were grateful, but to call this a celebration sounded like a word they would want us to use. To hear it from my mother's mouth felt strained and unnatural. "It's a cold morning." Fritz wasn't quite as cheery as Mama had sounded, but his tone also didn't match his bruise or the heavy bags under his eyes. "Maybe I'll build us a fire while you cook. Help me with it, Gerda." Anna's apartment was newer than ours and had central heating, which was considered a great luxury. I envied her every winter when we had to collect wood to burn for our heat, which never reached all the way into my small bedroom. But except for the rain, I didn't think this morning was particularly cold. We wouldn't normally use up valuable wood to warm an apartment we'd all be leaving for the day, which meant something more was going on. Fritz stacked a few sticks of wood in our fireplace and grabbed a handful of papers to use as kindling. He picked up the first paper, and I saw his handwriting on it, which said, "Be careful what you say. The apartment is bugged." Bugged? 1,000 questions instantly leapt into my mind. Where were the microphones? How long had they been here? Who was listening to them? He knew I'd read it because my eyes were wide with fear. Then he crumpled up the paper and stuffed it into the middle of the wood stack. The next paper had already been written out for Mama. It said, "The Stasi knew about a private conversation between me and Gerda the other night. They listened to every word we say in here." My mouth went dry. I remembered listening to the Beatles, and I was sure we had complained about the GDR because we usually did at night. That same conversation in Fritz's bedroom was where I had told Mama the details about seeing Dominic. She had come in unexpectedly, cutting off our conversation about Peter. Fritz said Peter had told no one else about his escape, and Fritz had told nobody about it but me. We were the reason they had caught him, the reason he was killed. Tears filled my eyes, and I shook my head, horrified at what all of this meant. But Fritz had a paper for that too. He rummaged through a few in his stack until he found one that said, "We didn't know, but we do now and will be more careful. We must sound happy." We'd gone too long without speaking, and Fritz called out, "Gerda and I will have this fire going soon. Then I'll shower and we can get to school. Maybe since Anna won't be at school today, I can walk Gerda there." "That's a good idea," Mama said. "Although we'll both be at work after school, Gerda. I expect you to come straight home today." "Yes, Mama." I croaked the words out, and it felt as though I were speaking them directly into a microphone, which I supposed I was. Everything around me felt forced, and I didn't see how Mama and Fritz were just carrying on like normal. No, it wasn't normal. We never talked like this. Mama didn't make celebratory meals, and we wouldn't have celebrated his release from the Stasi anyway. And Fritz never walked me to school, whether Anna was with me or not. But there we were an hour later, with Fritz walking beside me within throwing distance of the wall. I used to think this was the last place we could talk freely, but now it seemed like the only place. Beneath a shared umbrella, our conversation was as private as it possibly could be. Still, we kept our voices low. "I heard about Peter's death yesterday while at school," Fritz said. "A friend told me the Stasi was interviewing his parents and that they might be arrested too." "For what crime?" I asked. "Peter tried to escape, not them." "The Stasi view escape on the same level as treason, so they'll embarrass and shame Peter's family now. They'll have to work extra hard to prove their loyalty to the state." An older couple was passing by us, so Fritz and I fell silent. When we were alone again, Fritz said, "When I heard about Peter's death, I knew the only thing I could do was keep my head down and hope nobody remembered that we were friends. I got through the end of school, but Stasi officers were waiting for me the minute I arrived at work. They said it was only for a few questions, but I knew otherwise." "What did they do to you?" Fritz lowered his head. Clearly he didn't want to answer that question, not even for me. By then, we were passing the platform where I had seen Dominic and Papa yesterday, but they weren't there this time. I had been so sure they would come. After all, if Papa was trying to send me a message, then why wouldn't he be here? Especially today, of all days. Maybe it was for the best. Even from the distance between us, Papa might have been able to see the dark bruise under Fritz's eye. It would worry him. "There's something more I have to tell you," Fritz said. "And Mother doesn't know about this part, so don't say a word to her about it." "I won't." It wasn't the first secret we'd kept from her. "They showed me a huge file they're still keeping on Father. Before he left, the Stasi documented everything about him, where he went after work, who his friends were, even what newspapers he brought back from the West when he visited there. They never found anything serious he had done, but were sure it was just a matter of time before they had a reason to arrest him." This wasn't a surprise. Papa had told me the same thing himself, and we'd had the visits from Stasi agents to our apartment. Papa knew he was being tracked because of his part in the uprising, and because he continued to speak to others who wanted more uprisings in the future. But he never committed any crimes or incited anyone to violence. Papa wasn't a violent man, just a thoughtful one. Fritz continued. "Then they showed me another file, one with my name on it." I stopped walking to stare at him. "Why? What have you done?" "Nothing. Or at least I didn't think I had. But they know Papa is in the West now, and so they're watching to see if he contacts me or if his friends do. Maybe one day I'll happen to bump into someone who used to know him. If anyone even asks about Father, someone is bound to hear it, and then that report will go into my file." "Well, if you haven't done anything wrong, then they can make your file as big as they want. If you obey all the rules, everything will be fine, right?" I looked over, hoping to see him agree with me. "Isn't that right, Fritz?" But he shook his head and lowered his voice to almost a whisper. "They told me what the file means. I've been branded a potential enemy of the state. It doesn't matter to them if I've done anything wrong. They just figure I will one day. With that file, I won't be allowed to go to a university or to get a good job. By the end of June, I'll be old enough for the military, and before they put a gun in my hand, that file means I'll get special training until they're sure I believe the way they do. Once I wear their uniform, I'll get the most dangerous assignments, the ones few people survive. That file means I have no chance in life, none. They've already determined that I will fail." "All because of Papa?" I asked. "None of that's your fault." "I'm not blaming him," Fritz said. "I smuggled in that Beatles record and that banana on your birthday and other stuff you don't know about. Nothing bad, but nothing I'd want to get caught with either. They must have heard me complain about the government every night on their microphones, and I've never made it any secret that I don't want to join the military. My file might have started because of Father, but I'm the one who's been filling it." "Well, I won't let you fail," I said stubbornly. "If you can't get a job, then you'll live with me. If they brainwash you, then I'll talk you out of it when you come home. Whatever they do to you, Mama and I will be there to help." Fritz rubbed the top of my head with his hand. Usually I hated that, but not this time. It was his way of showing affection, and I wanted that comfort from him now. Then he sighed and said, "You don't understand how bad it is, Gerda. They have a file on you, too.